Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Dom and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be showing you how to perform two-way data binding using JavaScript. Alright, so what do I mean by two-way data binding? I'm referring to the ability to bind a JavaScript object to one or more form fields. Alright, so many different frameworks and libraries out there, such as Vue.js and React, they allow you to bind a form field to some data in your JavaScript code. So you can actually do that pretty easily with the use of getters and setters. All right, so I'm going to show you how to do that right now. As we can see, we have this form field right here and I can enter my name. All right, so that's all I've got right now on the HTML. I assume you guys also have some sort of form or form field. If you don't, feel free to simply create something like this, a simple input field right here with an ID so we can actually access it inside the JavaScript. All right, so the first step here is going to be to drop down and create two new constants, okay? The first constant here is going to be called name input, and it's going to be equal to a reference to that input field, all right? So I'll just say here document.getElementById, then pass through here name input, okay? Just like that. I can make a second constant here. This one is now going to be an object which represents this form. Now, obviously, I haven't actually got a full form here with multiple fields, but I assume you guys might have something like that, maybe a sign up form or a login form and so on. So let's make a new object right here to represent all of the form fields. So I can call this simply form object equal to a new empty object just like that. All right, so now essentially, we need to now define a property on this form object, and this property is going to be called name, and the name property is going to bind with this input field right here. So to achieve that, let's drop down here. We're going to be using the define property function on an object. All right, so I'll say object right here, then say dot define property just like that. So of course, this is just one way to define a property on an object in JavaScript, and it allows you to set up some really detailed attributes or behaviors regarding to your property. So you're going to want to use this one right here, and now we're going to pass through here the form object as the first argument to say, yes, I want to add a property to this particular object right here. The second argument is going to be the name of your property. In this case, I want to say name right here. All right. So I can now specify a third argument being an empty object just like this. We're going to be adding to this object very shortly, but for now, I just want to simply console.log the form object to see what we currently have, right? So if I save this, go back in the browser, do a refresh here, we can see the value of the form object is this right here. The name is currently undefined, all right? So this property here, we're going to be accessing it using a getter and a setter. So really you can sort of think about it as like a, I guess, dynamic property in that we're able to essentially run a function to retrieve its value and a separate function to set its value. So it's like custom behavior on an object in a sense, or on a property, should I say. So going back inside here, let's define a new property inside this object right here. Just some extra attributes for our define property function call. So down here, we're going to say get just like this, and then we're going to specify it like this. This just means we're now able to essentially override what it means to get the property of name on this form object. So that being said, I can say something like return 45. And now if you go back inside the browser here and do a refresh, we get this right here. If I now expand my object, we have this name property once again. I can now click on this, this invoke property getter here, and we get 45. So this right here is a custom function, and you can change whatever it does. It's sort of like, yeah, it's basically just a custom function for when you're getting a value from, or getting the name property from that form object, which means I can do something like this. I can say math.random, and now essentially I'm going to get a new random number every time I call this function, or you know, a better way to sort of put it is, you know, when I try and access the name property. So going back inside here, do a refresh again, we now get 0.93, do a refresh, go back, we get 0.62, etc. So that's how that works. And of course, you can also say form object.name, and you get the same result. Refresh, we get that again, so on. So the point is, this is a function which runs when you try to access or get the name property on your form object. So with that being said, it's going to be really straightforward. We're just going to say here, name input dot value, just like that. All right. So we're going to get the input field's value when I call, you know, or when I try to access the name property. Go back in the browser now, refresh. I can now say something like DOM as my name. Then I can do form object.name, and we get DOM. Let's make this, you know, something like water. Okay, go back and we get water. So that's how we have the first step for our data binding between the JavaScript object and the actual HTML form field. So let's make it now. So when I set a value for the name property, it's going to update the input field. This right here is very straightforward, and it works in the exact same way. So let's add a new property to this object here, and we're going to call this one set. Now this right here is going to take through a new value. So this parameter right here, new value, is going to be whatever you decide to pass in when you use the equals assignment. So that being said, if I do something like this, where I just say form object dot name is equal to, let's just say DOM and then in brackets decode, right? If I just say console.log new value, we're going to get here DOM decode. Back in the browser, refresh, we get DOM decode right there from that console.log. Okay. So now you guys might have already guessed it, but essentially we're just going to say here, name input dot value is equal to the new value. So now we can say, look, when I get my name, I'm going to return the name of input value. When I set my name, I'm going to actually set that against that form field. All right. So let's try again. Let's actually remove that assignment, go back in the browser, and then assign it manually. So I'll say here, form object dot name is equal to DOM. Press enter, and we get DOM right there. Perfect. I can now say form object dot name, and we can see it's going to give me the value of DOM. So that right there is how to do two-way data binding using vanilla JavaScript. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.